Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good to be together this morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jay. I'm so glad you're here with us. You say good morning over and over, which is code for stop. Stop talking. But it's good to be together, and I will be continuing in our series in the book of Job, which is a book that many people highlight in black marker. It's one of those books that people have not read often, and yet, as if you were here last week, you heard Annabeth teach, Job is probably the first book, the oldest book we have in the Bible. So most people don't realize that, probably the oldest. And it is a really significant book for so many different reasons, which we'll talk about over these weeks. But it has personal significance for me. Many of you know I was not raised in church at all, no church background whatsoever. And, I was given a Bible, I was reading the Bible. And, it was interesting enough, but I didn't quite understand what was going on. And when I came to the book of Job, it was the first part I read in the Bible that I thought, now this is interesting. I mean, this guy's story is really complicated. It is the kind of story I didn't expect to read in the Bible because everything goes wrong. And they spend the whole book basically as people trying to make sense of why everything goes wrong for Job. And I found it fascinating. I found it so fascinating, in fact, that as I was chasing around a girl to try to date her, in my newfound faith, this girl named Danielle, who, spoiler alert, is now my wife. The first time that we went on a date, which I tricked her into, by the way, I said there will be other people there, and there weren't, which is creepy unless it works, and then it's a funny story. Okay, so we were together, and I knew she had a real deep life with Jesus. And I, of course, have a pretty new faith, and so I knew I had to try to impress her, and so I said, I've been really, really learning a lot reading the Bible. And she said, oh, really? What part are you liking? I said, I find this job guy so interesting. And she went, I like Job too. I was like, oh, so it will forever be memorialized in our relationship, my dear friend Job. It is spelled J-O-B for what it's worth. That's not a stupid thing. But anyway, so personally, I just found this story amazing because for me, having not read the Bible, to read the Bible and go, this is taking on like real problems in the human condition, like real pain that people experience that seems to come out of nowhere. I mean, you want to talk about something that transcends all of our experience. You might be today in a moment where you're trying to make sense of something horrible that's happened in your life. Actually, if we're going to be more honest, you might be trying not to make sense of it. You might be medicating it in some manner or avoiding it or trying not to have that conversation or not think about that. Or you might go, Jay, I don't know. I just haven't had a lot of tragedy in my life. Basically, things just go the way I want them to go, click after click, which, okay, I'm so happy to hear that's true for you. That won't be true for long. Every single person in this room is going to encounter something that goes wrong in your life, something that you don't know how to make sense of. And if it doesn't happen to you first, some kind of horrible tragedy, whether it be your body breaks down, a relationship you were counting on falls apart, something happens with your kids. I mean, this is why the story of Job is so powerful. All the things happen to him. All the things. Every part of what he has goes away. His entire family is decimated, and his very body is broken down. They all happen to him very quickly, all at once, and then he's left having to try to figure it out. This will happen. Some version of these things will happen to every person in this room. And that's why I just love the Bible. The Bible speaks to us from where we really are, not where we would like to be, what we imagine the world could be like. The Bible is not some idealized story of people in a galaxy far away. The Bible speaks to our lives, which I just love, and this book in particular does so. Just a couple weeks ago, I'm talking to a guy, we'll call him Mike, and somewhere in there I have to tell people I'm a pastor or I'm lying. Often when I'm talking to people, I don't like to introduce myself as pastor because they start to behave weird, like instantly. So I try really hard to just be like, oh yeah, I work with a bunch of nonprofits and, do different community development stuff. I try, because I just like to be with humans, like in a normal way. But we were like 3 or 4 reps into a conversation, and finally I was like, well, actually, I'm a pastor. And he went, oh, okay, and I've seen that before. But it was a little mixed, and he said, I find that amazing that you can have a faith in God. He goes, I don't think I could do that. And I said, really? Why not? He says, well, it was only a few years ago. My dad, who'd lived a really great life, was a great dad. He was a human. He had mistakes, but he just dropped over dead. He just died. Boom, gone. No opportunity to have a connection. I didn't have an opportunity to say goodbye. And he died just a little bit before my wedding. And so I spent the entire wedding thinking about the fact my dad's not there. And if I'm really honest, I think about him every single day. And I can't make sense of how God could let that happen. How can I believe in a good God when this is my real life? P.S. There is some version of that floating around everywhere. How can I believe in a good God when this happened in my marriage? How can I believe in a good God when this has happened to my kids? How can I believe in a good God when I did all this stuff in this business and I got swindled and now I'm destitute? How can I believe in a good God? And sometimes it's a combination of things. There's some of you in the room that when you read the story of Job, you hear the things going wrong, you're like, oh yeah, check, 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 check. I've had things go wrong in my relationship. I have things going wrong in my career. I have things going wrong with my body. How am I supposed to believe in a good God? And then I'm going to come to church and you're going to have me sing happy songs and try to ply me with coffee. This is a joke. Where's the real world? How does life work? This doesn't seem real. And maybe there's people out there who just don't live in the real world, and that's why they believe in God. But here's where it's even more complicated in relationship to this guy, Mike. Here's where it gets complicated, as though it's not complicated enough. He's handing this to me. So now I have to say something. So it's not just he's got a problem, now we have a problem. And now I got to do something. Now, what am I going to say? And there might be some of you in the room going, I don't know, basically things are going okay. There's always things you want to be better, but basically things are going okay. But I do have this one friend, and it's bad. And, this guy, this girl is such a downer. We used to hang out and have a good time, and now if we hang out, I just got to hear about this miserable stuff going on in their life. And you might find yourself avoidant, I just don't know what to do with this person. I don't know how to call my aunt. All she does is talk about all the horrible things happening. Everyone has that aunt, by the way. It's just a disaster. I just don't want to call them. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. Or you're on the other side, which some of you just engage all the way. I'm all the way in. And I've got to say something. What do I say? What are the words I say? What are the things I do? And we've all known people who say dumb things to people who are having a hard time. Just think through right now, a moment maybe you've had that's hard, and someone said a dumb thing to you. I happen to be at lots of weddings and funerals because of what I do. One of the things I do at funerals, as soon as possible, is I try to tell the whole room, don't say dumb things. Because there are so many dumb things people say at funerals. Like, oh, I guess God just wanted another angel. What? What are you saying? And basically, they're just like, I feel uncomfortable. They just vomit something out of their face. They don't know what to do, so they just say something. They just say something. And it turns out, and what we'll see in this part of the story is, it's one thing to have hard things going on. It's another thing when your friends make it worse. They make it worse. They say stuff that actually makes it worse, make it more complicated, make it so now you're in some kind of philosophical puzzle. The passage we read is probably the moment, maybe the only moment, in the entire book where people get it right. They get it right before they get it wrong. Because Annabeth did such a good job reading the names, I'm sure they were in perfect Hebrew or Aramaic or whatever. You did great. That was really good. I was very excited to watch you read those. I just had and you did way better than I was hoping, because I thought it'd be fun to make some jokes, but you just did too well. Okay, so you have the friends that walk up to Job after all of these horrible things have happened. His family has been killed. Everything he owns is gone, and he is personally, his body has welts all over it. So this is pretty bad. And if you remember, I'll just read in the story. I'll start in verse 12. It says, when they saw him from a distance, they could hardly recognize him. They began to weep aloud. They tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their heads. And then listen to this. Then they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights. No one said a word to him because they saw how great his suffering was. Like, I think this is probably the apex, like the highlight of these friends. And it's important that we say nice things about them, because we're about to say a bunch of horrible things about them, because this was their best moment. They were able to just sit with their friend in suffering and just hold space with him. This might be the hardest thing to do when someone's in pain, is to just be with them. To be quiet, to say, I'm with you, no matter what's going on, I'm just going to hold space with you. It's awkward. It's awkward to grieve. It's awkward to be with people who are grieving. But throughout most of the world's history, and in most cultures actually to this day, when people are in grief or things are going wrong, most cultures are designed in such a way that your community just comes and sits with you, feeds you, makes sure that you're going to sleep, and gives you the space for that pain and that grief to move through you. Grief and loss have to move through you. You can't move around these things. You have to move through them. We happen to live in a culture where you're usually due to be at work the next day. There's some of you that have had loss, and I've even sat with people and they say, I just want to get back to work so I can just get this off my mind. I would like you to consider that that's not how it works. When you have real loss, like Job is describing, it's important to feel connected to other people and have space to process that pain and to let it out. Great friends sit with people who are in loss and just wait. If you want like a little tip, some of you maybe are counselors in the room, you would know this. Often what's helpful when people are in loss is to even let them tell stories of what they're thinking about and what they're processing. Let them talk about their best memories of their dad, or the stuff that they're really sad about and they don't know what to make sense of. Let people empty how they're thinking and process it in a connected, safe, warm space. And do your very best to reflect the wisdom of these friends. Shut your mouth. Do your best not to talk. If you must talk, just talk in a way that you connect with them. Be like, that sounds really hard. I really care about you. Man, this is a really tricky thing. This is not the kind of thing that's easy to make sense of. Those are all validating sentences without explanation. But what's hard about being a friend like this is you tend to feel their pain with them, which is why people don't like doing this. This is why we don't like to go to hospitals. This is why we don't like to go to funerals. This is why you don't call your aunt. Because she is annoying. And you start to feel the things she feels, and it's really difficult, right? This takes incredible resiliency and personal strength. The fact that they can do this for 7 days means they should win an award. They do it for 7 days. It's incredible that they do this. Most people can't do it 7 minutes or 7 hours, let alone 7 days. And yet, at the end of 7 days, they break. And they start jibber-jabbering. And the things they say are hurtful. Now, when we're about to talk about what they say, they all kind of fit a similar theme, though they have different forms. It's worth you paying attention when I start to talk about what they say and ask yourself, is that the kind of thing I might say? Or have I had someone say this to me? Because sometimes when people say these kinds of things to you, they stick in you and you keep thinking about them. They don't go away very quickly. Some of the things that they say sound like wisdom, but are honestly, they're actually fairly cursing, and it creates complication in someone's mental processes or even their emotional processes. Because what these guys start to do is try to seek an explanation. We all want to explain this stuff away, and their explanations, frankly, are really bad, and God says it's so. Okay, so first guy is Eliphaz. Basically, what Eliphaz says is this: I have heard from God myself, so prophetic Vineyard person. I have, that was the joke for 8 people. Okay, so I have spiritual insight. God has spoken to me, and I'm going to tell you something that I think is important for you to hear. And basically, this is his message. You must have sinned. You must have done something wrong for this to happen to you, because God is just, and bad things only happen to bad people. So the reason that this has gone so badly is because you must have done something wrong. You must be bad. Job chapter 4, verses 7 and 8, he says, consider now, who being innocent has ever perished? Where were the upright ever destroyed? As I have observed, says Eliphaz from his own spiritual lofty place, those who plow evil and those who sow trouble reap it. You must have done something wrong, and because you did something wrong, bad things are happening to you. And he asks a rhetorical question: who being innocent has ever perished? Where were the upright ever destroyed? This is so dumb. It's hard to even make comments about it. Where have you ever seen the innocent perished? How about everywhere? I mean, Eliphaz, this is like the dumbest thing you could say. I mean, we don't have to scan like the newspapers to see where horrible things happen to really good people. Children die. Suffering happens to people who've done nothing wrong. Eliphaz's world is so black and white and clear. Only bad things happen to bad people. Good things happen to good people. Frankly, this is there's a reason why in American culture we basically love the Proverbs, because the Proverbs are kind of black and white in this way often. There's a reason why in American culture we tend not to read Job or Lamentations, because we don't want to read about the fact that like horrible things happen to people often when they've done nothing wrong. They've done nothing wrong. Instead, we want to live in a world where the only reason bad things happen is because they're bad people. Now, let's be fair, let's be kind to Eliphaz, because again, someday we might see him in heaven. So we should be nice to him. And I'm accruing a list of people that will be mad at me when I see them one day. So I'm gonna say a couple nice things about him, because here's the truth. it is often true that if you are doing bad things do happen to you. So don't get me wrong. Sometimes if you're being an idiot, bad things happen. If you're mean to everybody, people will be mean to you. But that doesn't necessarily follow then that if bad things are happening, you must have done something wrong. That's not true. That's not what the scriptures teach. That's not true in real life. This is bad wisdom. It's bad advice. And what I appreciate about Job is Job fights him. If you want to read the whole thing, Job just starts going at him like, you're an idiot, stop talking. And it works. He stops talking. So up pops friend number 2 who's listened to this argument, and he says, I have a slight nuance on this thought. Bildad is the second guy, and he basically says this. Here's the real truth about suffering. The problem is it's probably your parents that suck, and so that's hurt you. Anybody heard of modern psychological theory? I mean, let me just summarize a lot of counseling for you right now. It's your mom's fault. It's definitely her fault. You all laugh because it's, anyway, okay. You're like, ha, 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 ha. Okay, so, and all the moms in the room are like, oh, I hate this. Okay, so your mom, your parent, your ancestors suck, and if they don't suck, which they do, what's also true is your kids suck, and so that's probably also your fault. So the fact that your parents suck and your kids suck mean that you suck in the way your parents suck. And so that's why horrible things are going to happen. And that's just so like the way it works. And again, what's so hard about advice like this is it's technically true. It's technically true. Like, I mean, if you don't know this, you do kind of suck. And it shows up in your kids' lives, and your parents kind of sucked, and that shows up in your life, right? So it's not patently false. But the things we're describing don't line up with that narrative. And listen to how he says it in Job 8. He says, does God pervert justice? Does the Almighty pervert what is right? When your children sinned against him, see, this is the children thing, he gave them over to the penalty of their sin, but you will seek God earnestly and plead with the Almighty. And if you are pure and upright, even now he will rouse himself on your behalf and restore you to your prosperous state. See, the problem is, and he makes the parent argument in another text, your parents suck and your kids suck, but don't worry. If you kind of redouble your efforts, God will make things better for you. There's no reason you would know this, but this could commonly be referred to as maybe the prosperity gospel. The belief that God's whole intention for you is for you to be healthy, wealthy, and wise. That's really what God's up to. He just wants to make you perfectly healthy, give you all your money, and make you way smarter. And if you do everything right, that's what's going to happen. There's some of you right now going, where's that church? Is that church meeting now? There's probably still time to get there. Are they? And the reason why those churches tend to flourish in places like the United States is because that's the American dream. The American dream is, if I do everything right, then everything great is going to happen for me. Period. And if something's gone wrong, it's definitely somebody else's fault. And the key thing is we got to figure out who to blame, and then we'll all feel better. By the way, I say, if any of you have hung out with me at all, that's one of my favorite phrases to say. Like we'll be in the middle of an argument, somebody's arguing about something, and I'll stop the argument and go, everybody stop. Here's the key. If we figure out who to blame, it's all going to be better. Some of you are like, that's good advice, write that down. No, I'm saying it sarcastically. Because often figuring out who to blame doesn't change anything. You can get some wisdom. This is where it's tricky. There is wisdom in learning about the kind of parent you want to be. And generations are supposed to go. There's wisdom there, but that's not an explanatory piece to understand why there's suffering in the world. The world is just broken. Things go wrong. And listen, I've been in some form of church ministry my entire adult life. I have watched parents who are the very best parents in the world have their kids go absolutely crazy. And I have watched people who are the worst parents ever. Like they're not paying any attention. They're lighting up crack and handing it to their children. I'm not even joking. I'm not exaggerating right now. This is a real world. I've literally watched this. And those kids do incredibly well. These are not one-to-one. Now, of course, there are percentages. There's odds. If you raise your kids better, they tend to do better. If you do horrible things, your kids are going to have a harder time. But here's the truth. Like, God works in people's lives no matter what. Miracles can happen no matter what. And horrible things can happen, even if everything has been perfectly aligned. This is what's just true, and this is why we hate the book of Job. Okay, last guy. This guy Zophar. His is a little more complicated. The last guy of the completely dumb guys. He basically takes the argument one step further, and he says, okay, here's the deal. It's not just that, like, you're messed up. The thing is, you deserve so much worse, is basically what he says. He's just like, however bad you think it is, it could be so much worse. You are awful. Job 11:6, he says this, know this, God has even forgotten some of your sin. Okay, so you're being paid for your sins, but it could be so much worse. And the truth is, that's also true. However bad you think you are way worse. You just are, if you didn't know that. So now some of you are like, I thought you said Zophar's dumb. He is dumb, but because he's dumb, because he's saying somehow that explains what's happening. It doesn't. It just doesn't. Like, God gives grace to people who are horrible people. Have you ever had this experience? You're like with a person who's like a horrible person, and they seem to have so much blessing in their life. And you're like, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, but that is the way it works. Jesus says that. Does the sun not shine on the righteous and the unrighteous? It's not like the rain falls around people based on how good they are. It doesn't work like that. The sun shines on both. The rain falls for both. There's something else going on here that you can't explain these things one-to-one. Elihu is the last guy, and he's pretty good. He does better, but he's also dumb. At least what he says is, there is something to learn in suffering. His basic argument is this. We don't really know why all this stuff's happening, but here's what we do know. God is doing this so that you can learn something and be drawn toward him. Closer, right? Closer. But it's still not necessarily helpful, because sometimes suffering is just suffering. Sometimes something is just bad. There's no intention in it. Like none. Like it's just bad. There are sometimes bad things. There's some of you in this room that you replay every conversation that's been horrible in your life. And you run them over and over, and you just go, there's got to be a way to make sense of this. There's got to be a way to, psychologists call this hypervigilance. I've experienced pain and experience. If I can just process it enough, I'll make it so that will never happen to me again. And you're in a trap. You're stuck because there's always something to learn. There's always something to know. Do you know what? That's not true. Sometimes people are just mean. They're just like mean. Sometimes you got in a car accident and it damaged your body. It just happened. There's nothing to learn. It was just bad. If there's a percentage in the room that I just said this to you right now, and you can just let yourself off the hook. You can say, I have run this thing. You have been to 4 counselors trying to make sense of this one thing that happened, and sometimes there's no way to make sense of it. And by the way, they might just take your money anyway. Because they're gonna be Elihu, like there is definitely something to learn here. Maybe there isn't. Maybe bad things just happen sometimes, and you just let it go. You can just turn it loose, and you can do the next thing in your life. So Job argues with all of them, and basically is like, you are all idiots. And here's what's great. God agrees with Job. Job 42:7. After the Lord had said these things to Job, which we'll look at a little bit more next week, he said to Eliphaz the Temanite, I am angry with you and your 2 friends because you've not spoken the truth about me, as my servant Job has. And then he says this crazy thing, and in all this, Job did not sin. Job argues, he does not sin. He says, the 3 of you are dumb. Then he looks at Elihu and says, not as dumb, but still dumb. And then he says, I'm going to talk to you, Job. We'll talk about that next week. So here's what we can learn. Things I already said. Be present and don't try to fix people. Don't assume you don't know their whole story. Let people grieve. Don't rush to answers. Don't, listen, this is really important. Don't weaponize Scripture so you can make yourself feel better. Do not quote Jeremiah 29 to 11 to somebody who's in a bad spot. Don't worry, Okay. And above all, here's the key, and this is how we'll end. In all of these things, there is a way to find a deeper life with God without having to explain it. Here's what I want to say. Here's how I want to end. What kind of friend did Job need? What kind of friend did he need? We already said he needs somebody who would just listen and be with him. That's true, and that helps, that connection. That'll help people grieve. But what kind of friend did he need? I would like to suggest that that friend was available to Job and is available to us. Here's the great news. We worship a God who does not just come with simple solutions, but who enters into the story. This is where the faith that we have in Jesus is different than every other religious system that has ever existed. Because God wrapped himself in human flesh. He entered the human story. He entered into a family in the middle of nowhere that had no power, no prestige, nothing interesting. He lived a normal life with people, entered into all of the suffering that everyone experiences, and he took that suffering onto himself. The story we know in Jesus is all of the sin of the world he took into his hands and into his feet. A spear was driven into his side. He suffered and he died. When you come to this God, when you come to him in prayer and you go, how do I make sense of this thing in my marriage? How do I make sense of this thing in my job? My body is breaking down. The writer of Hebrews says this, you do not come to a high priest who is unable to sympathize with your weakness. For in every way that you have suffered, he himself suffered. He suffered in every way. This is not the God that stands in the sky, white Zeus God with lightning bolts, who throws laws down and says, try better, do harder work, you could be more, you can do it. When life hands you lemons, make lemonade. Your attitude determines your altitude. None of this crap. We worship a God who entered into the story. And he took it in. And he suffered in every way. And yet he rose again. And he is seated at the right hand of the Father, interceding on our behalf. When you come to him, he knows. This is the friend you need. This is the friend you need. You need a friend who can come close to you and to give you strength in the midst of that which is a mess. Every person in this room is going to suffer. Every person in this room is going to die. And you're going to watch people die. And you need a friend that can go, I'm with you, I hear you, I know exactly what you're going through, and I can give you strength to move through this moment. That is Jesus. When Jesus heard about his friend dying, Lazarus, he shows up and everybody's crying, and what does Jesus do? What's he do? He weeps. He weeps. He feels what they feel, and he's with them, but he says, listen, there is life after this death. There will be life after this. But in this moment, we're going to have to weep together. This is going to be hard. You can have a relationship with God where he weeps with you. He strengthens you in your loss, that you don't have to medicate. You don't have to avoid. You don't have to pretend. You can have a life with God where you enter into a life with Jesus. Many of you in this room have done that. You've said yes to Jesus. Many of you in this room have done that. But there might be a few of you that today could be your day to proclaim your faith in the waters of baptism. We put you under the water, that enters into the death of Jesus. You raise out of the water, you enter into new life with Jesus. Today could be your day to make a public profession of your faith in Jesus. It could happen today. Because when God grabs a hold of your life, it might not change all the circumstances. It's not like Christians all of a sudden live forever. With my friend Mike, that's how I ended. I said, so if God was good and he loved you, that means your dad wouldn't have died? Like ever? And he was like, that doesn't make much sense. I know. I go, but here's what I want you to know. Jesus can be with you in this. He entered in. He knows the pain you're experiencing, and he can be there with you. Amen? Why don't we stand together?